Oh, all right. What's going on out there, guys? My name is Dan,
My name is Alex.
and we're here to talk to you about the differences between
Lowering springs,
and
coilovers.
nice. So, we're going to start off today by just kind of going over some basics because a lot of customers ask, which one should I get? What's the difference? Why should I get this one versus this one? My man Alex is here to answer all the questions you guys have. We're going to start with.
Lowering springs.
All right. So, Alex, if I'm a customer,
Yes,
why
Dan.
would I want a lowering spring instead of a coilover?
I don't know, Dan. You tell me. If you're a customer, why would you want it?
Maybe because maybe I want to lower my car.
There you go.
All right. Cool.
So let me explain lowering springs. So lowering springs are simply a aftermarket spring that replaces your factory spring, and it's lower than your factory spring. So in essence, it lowers your car. One thing that's really good about it is that it's a really good price point. So these are Manzo springs. I think these are from for a Ford Mustang from like 2005 to 10 or something like that. I believe these are like $85 a set, so that's for all four of them. So it's pretty cheap. What's good about them is that there's nothing really to them, right? So you have to take out your old springs, you have to replace these. That means you keep your factory shocks. So if your shocks are really worn or they're on their way out, these lowering springs are going to accelerate the process of them kind of going bye-bye. So after lowering springs, some customers have said that all of a sudden they have leaky shocks, now they need new shocks. If only I would have known, then I would have gone with, aftermarket shocks, coilovers, etc. But we do like to tell people that lowering springs, they do accelerate wear on your factory shocks. If they're old, they're going to blow. And you might want to keep that in mind. They also have a higher spring rate than the factory springs as well. So the ride will be a little bit firmer. And you're going to run into sort of having a factory shock that's made for a certain spring rate lowering or for a certain spring rate spring that comes on the car from the factory. So let's say, for example, they're made for like 200 pounds per inch, and you replace them with these, and they're like 250 pounds per inch. You're essentially increasing what the shock has to hold. So the shock's probably not going to necessarily be really happy. So just make sure that when you get lowering springs, your shocks are good, and you should be fine. As you can tell, they don't come with any camber kit. They don't come with any camber plates. They don't come with any sway bar end links. They're just a basic lowering spring.
Right. And just so you guys know, we have a lot of different kinds of lowering springs on the site, from Manzo, Megan Racing, Godspeed, Ibach, RSR, all kinds of different things. A lot of them they all come in different spring rates as well. So when you go on the site looking for ones for your specific vehicle, check the spring rates. So now that we've talked about that, why would I not want this? Why would I want a coilover?
So a coilover kit like this, so this one's BC Racing. This one's about $995 for all four. We have them on the site ranging anywhere from about $400 and up or so. What's good about a system like this is, as you can see, it's pretty complete, right? So you in essence take out your old factory shock and spring all as one set, and then you simply replace it with this. One thing also about the lowering springs is that in order to replace them, you have to get spring compressors for your old spring. So the install isn't necessarily as easy because you literally have to take everything apart. Here, you only unbolt the top mounts, you unbolt the lower mounts, and for the most part, it just comes right out and you reinstall the new one. So install is a lot easier with these. You do get new shocks, and you do get springs, and you get everything already sealed. So in here's a bump stop, you have a rubber dust boot. Many of the applications do come with top plates, and many of these top plates do have pillow ball mounts, so they do have camber adjustability already on top. So an all-in-one system here, that's why coilover kits are really, really popular, and we sell a lot of them, is because they come packed with a whole bunch of features. And what's really nice about these is, as opposed to the lowering springs where you have to put them on factory shocks that aren't made for a higher rate spring, and they're also not made to really be lowered, but most of them can handle it fine. is that these are actually designed for them, right? So these shocks are valved to make sure that they can handle over the long term the rates of these springs. So that's why typically a coilover kit like this, it'll give you much better performance because everything's nice and balanced, and it also will last a whole lot longer. One of the things that you're probably going to ask me later on that maybe we should address right now is that some people say, I have coilovers already, they came on the car, I'm adjusted all the way down, I want my car to be lower, can I put lowering springs on my coilovers?
I was literally about to ask that. I was waiting for him to stop talking.
I really know this guy and I kind of talk a lot. So let me address that right now. These lowering springs will not fit on here. Coilover springs are very different. As you can see, they're also way different in size. Coilover springs are always much more narrow and they're not as tall. These physically will not fit. So you cannot put lowering springs on these. If you do have a coilover kit like this, it's lowered all the way down and you still want to go even lower, I probably wouldn't recommend it because that's overextending the shock. But depending on the brand, you might be able to go a little bit lower, so you'll just have to replace these springs with actual lower or not as tall actual springs made for the coilover. So they come in various sizes. Ask us and we can let you know what you guys need. So I also wanted to address that sometimes people order lowering springs or they order coilovers and they're confused as to why it doesn't actually fit their car. So we should probably address how we get a lot of people ordering stuff and then having to return it.
Yep.
Because they didn't realize that just because it fits a Ford Fiesta doesn't mean that it also fits a Ford Fiesta ST.
Right.
And so you have to make sure that what we have on the site is made for your specific trim as well. We also have some people, maybe they misread or misread, that they order for a Focus thinking that the Fiesta will probably also fit. But no, they're very, very vehicle specific.
Right.
We have a lot of people making that mistake. And we also have a lot of people saying like, oh, these show to fit from 2005 to 2014. I have a 2016, will it fit? 99.9% of the time, the answer is no, it will not fit. In some cases, our site might not have been updated and the application range has been extended. For the most part, what's on the site is pretty accurate.
Right.
It won't fit. So if you don't find your application on the site, let us know. It might be on the site, maybe you didn't find it, or there's a bunch of coilovers out there that we don't even have on the site yet. So please let us know. We can have it added for you guys, and we can make sure that the part that you receive would be exactly for your application.
Right. Now, one last thing is as well is like when you look at some specific coilovers, like Rev 9 does this, for example, the lower mounts come in a couple different sizes. So I believe it's either 49.5 millimeters. I think the other one is 54.5.
Yeah, 54.5, primarily for the Volkswagen and the Audis.
Right. So if you have either one of those cars, there are different lowering mounts, and we've had some customers who order a specific one, and they have the wrong size. Please make sure that you're measuring your lower mounts ahead of time before you order. If you have any questions, you can also ask your specific manufacturer to see if they can help you out. We just want to make sure that everyone who gets their product gets the exact product for their vehicle. Because again, once it's installed, there's not really much we can do, but we want to make sure we help you out as best as we can before we get to that point.
Yep. Should we also address camber plates as well?
Yeah.
So camber plates, so like I'd say about half the coilovers that we sell, they do have camber plates. That's another sort of like added benefit. Some of the suspension design, some of the suspension designs of the factory cars means that camber plates can't be used because you literally won't be able to adjust your camber using a plate even if it had one, and so you need arms. So keep that in mind because some people don't want to get lowering springs because they want to get a coilover kit that has camber plates, but their car might not be able to use camber plates anyway, and so they're going to get coilovers, and then they're going to be confused as to why there's no camber plates on them, well, their particular design might not have it. So if you want to know if your particular car has it or not, ask us, we can let you guys know.
Should we go over the, like, when some people want to buy maybe just 2 of the 4?
Oh yeah, sure.
So what happens sometimes is, unfortunate things happen. We've had customers, obviously it's a car. People get into car accidents, get hit the front, hit the back, and the coilovers in the front or back could unfortunately be impacted in the accident.
And they hit curbs.
Or they hit curves. Maybe it's your fault,
Happens.
He used to get mad at me for texting and driving, so please don't do that. But
don't text and drive, you hit curbs and then you need new coilovers.
Yeah, and that's why we're in this conversation right now. So if you are in a situation where you do damage, or they do get damaged for 2 of the 4 or 1 of the 4, for the most part, I would probably say about maybe like 85% of the time, we cannot unfortunately do that, because a lot of the manufacturers we work with do just sell the full set of 4. Some might, you can definitely ask us, we can find out, but for the most part, just ask us, see if we can. I just can't guarantee it's always going to be in our favor, unfortunately.
Yeah, and it's also like there were lowering springs too, right? Some people want only the rears, right? Because they might, for example, have iBox or H&R or something, and they want the rear just a little bit lower. They say, oh, well, my iBox lower 1.3 in the rear. I saw that you guys had Manzo that lower 1.6. Can I only buy the rears?
Right.
Typically, the answer is no, because they only come in sets, and plus you don't want to mix and match, right? Like you don't want to have one brand with one spring rate in the front, one brand with like another spring rate, and potentially like a whole different spring design. One might be progressive or not, and like, you don't want to mix and match. Your car is going to handle really wonky and funky.
Yeah. It might fit realistically, but you're not going to get the drive you're expecting.
Yeah, and also. One thing to also note is that for the coilover manufacturers that can actually provide only the rears or only the fronts, we ourselves have been pretty shocked that the price that they charge for just 2 is like
pretty
almost
expensive.
the price that they charge for all 4.
It's maybe going to save you like $150, and
Yeah.
we're not kidding. And that's not
Maybe
Redline's
even
price.
less, yeah.
That's not Redline's price. That's literally from the manufacturers themselves, because it costs money for them to break apart sets, and now they have a set of 2 that they may not sell at all, so they got to recoup their loss.
Yeah, so they really don't encourage this practice, and that's why they charge kind of an arm and a leg for it.
Right.
That's why we typically recommend, if you have 2 on the car already, you need another 2. The 2 that you already have on the car, they're probably not new. Maybe they're like a year or 2 old anyway. You probably don't want to have a suspension that could potentially be worn.
Right.
Maybe you hit a curb.
Right.
Maybe not, right? And then replace them with 2 new ones in the back. The technology might have also been updated. Maybe they redid the valving on the rear shocks or something. So you're kind of mixing and matching. I know it's not what everybody wants to hear, but typically we just recommend, if you have to get these, just get the entire set of 4.
Right, especially if you get 2 rear replacement lowering springs, for example, your car is going to sit super high in the back while your front's lowered while you wait for the adjustment. It's going to be kind of weird, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Another thing that we do want to point out, and this is a common mistake. Now, it's not always the end user, which would be you in this situation's fault, but with lowering springs, one thing that I usually get is, hey man, my lowering springs are not fitting in the front. Why are they not fitting? I need to send them back because you guys sent me them wrong. So you can't see it from the video because the video is far, but this one does show an R on it for rear. Now, unfortunately, we are human, manufacturers are human. People make mistakes sometimes. Is that true, or is that not true?
I think it's true, but not everybody wants to.
Alex doesn't make mistakes.
I don't ever make mistakes. Other people do. It's kind of annoying.
I do sometimes. He gets mad at me. But so when you're installing lowering springs, you have to kind of look at them and figure out which one will fit, because we've had scenes sometimes where the rears are actually meant for the fronts and they're just labeled incorrectly. So people are trying to install the rears and the fronts, and it just doesn't seem right. And it almost kind of seems like you got the wrong lowering springs, but you actually didn't. Just swap them out, figure out which one fits, and for the most part, as long as, they're all vehicle specific. If they're meant for your vehicle, they will fit your vehicle. You just got to make sure that you're putting them in properly.
Yeah, and when you're taking apart your car, you'll see that like oftentimes the ones in the front are typically the ones which are wider, and then the ones in the back are typically the ones which are more narrow and tall. So I mean, like you can see when you receive yours that they should look pretty much like the ones that you're removing. Not all of them have the label of front or rear. So if you can't figure out sort of which one goes where, let us know. And then on some cars, once in a while, there are front and rear, and then also left and right. Primarily in the front, so keep in mind on that. But I mean, for the most part, we don't really have any issues. But once in a while, it pops up where the person says, "It looks like I got 4 rears," but it's like, no, you actually got them all correct, but you might have to put this one on the front right, this one on the front left, because the actual coil, the way that it coils, might be different.
And now another thing that I forgot to mention earlier when we're talking about lowering rates, one question that I get a lot is, if I do install coilovers, can I keep them at stock height? For the most part, no, because if you look, some of them do, pretty much all of them will lower, period. Now some of them may lower as little as, I think, like maybe 0.3 inches for some of them. Some of them maybe 0.9 inches, but for the most part, unfortunately, coilovers will not remain at stock height. You cannot raise with coilovers, but you can lower with the measuring spring rates that you do have on the site.
Yeah. So keep in mind, if the website has an actual lowering range on there, they typically begin lower than stock. Some manufacturers, like for example Rev9, Godspeed, BC Racing, K-Sport, Megan Racing, all those guys, they typically don't give any kind of lowering ranges, and so they always ask us to tell customers, if anybody ever asks, just tell them that the lowering range is about 1 inch lower than stock, down to about 3 inches or so. So just keep in mind that that's kind of like roughly what the lowering range would be. So expect that even at full height, you'll get about 1 inch lowering, and at full drop, you'll get maybe 2.5, 3 inches or so.
Roughly.
Yeah, roughly right around there. All right, so I think we answered a whole bunch of questions that people have. If there's anything that we didn't answer, please ask in the comments below. We will reply to you guys. And if we get enough of one question, maybe we could address it in a future video.
Absolutely. Let us know what you guys need from us. We'll be here to help.
Thanks, guys.